In order to be very successful in anything you do, you have to constantly learn, and not only learn things in your craft, but learn things about other crafts and other careers and aspects of life. That way it makes you more well-rounded. Do a lot of learning. You can either watch videos, which I do. I watch a lot of YouTube videos from what I call my mentors, like older celebrities, older people who've been in situations that I want to go to, either in the music industry, and sports industry, in the health industry. I also read a lot of different books on different aspects of life. One book that I've read is called The Power of Habit by Charles, I think his name is Duhigg. My coworker at Proform, Eric Toy, he introduced me to this book, and it's one of the most important books I've read in my life. This book pretty much sums up why we do what we do in life. As far as our habits, everything we do is a pattern, and it's a pattern that we end up doing habitually, and we don't even know we're doing it. It just happens because we've created this pattern in our life. And most times our results are based off of stuff that we don't have control over consciously. In this book, there's multiple studies, or the writer alludes to multiple studies that have the references in the back of the book. And a lot of the science studies in here indicate that our habits are formed from three basic concepts: a cue, a routine, and a reward. And everything in our life revolves around those three things. I'm a teacher at heart. I love spreading knowledge. If I learn something, I feel like the knowledge and information that I learn is of no use if I don't spread it and tell it to somebody else. I mean, we're social creatures, so we're not supposed to keep knowledge that's helpful inside. I'm not the type of person that will hold on to valuable information just so that another person can't get it, in fear that it will make me smaller or give somebody else an advantage that they will have over me. I feel like if I learned it from somebody else or some source, it's everybody's knowledge. Knowledge is shareable, it's spreadable. However, my form of teaching, or my form of spreading knowledge and sending out information that I've learned that was helpful, I prefer to do it in a manner that's more welcoming than the education system that we currently have now. It's not as structured as that one, but it's more free form, which is, I believe, how most people learn. They learn on their own terms and the way that they feel is best for them. So I like to put out information in that type of manner. In the book, it explains that the brain has like a three-step process when it comes to habits. And the first step in that process is a cue. This triggers the brain to do a certain action. Then we have a routine. This routine can be mental, it can be physical, or it can be emotional. After the routine, there's a reward. And this reward determines if that habit loop is worth remembering or if it's not worth remembering. With time, this three-step process becomes a habit, and it becomes more automatic the more it happens. So this explains why if you constantly do something or constantly do a certain routine, every time you do it, the more automatic it becomes. Similar to driving, where you can be driving and thinking about multiple things and not really realizing what you're driving. So to put the three-step loop or process into perspective and to put it into real-life terms, we'll use a health example. So for a person who's overweight or obese, a lot of times this example can relate to them. So the person in this situation, their cue is they had a bad day at work. This is the trigger for their brain. Their routine Their routine for when they have a bad day at work, which is their action, physical, mental, or emotional, their routine is to eat a snack. That's their routine. Their reward for eating the snack is they feel better about themselves. So their cue was they had a bad day at work, which triggered their brain into their next action. Their routine for feeling bad at work was that they would eat a lot of snacks. The reward was that it makes them feel better. So in this cycle, every time that they come back from work and they feel bad, they eat a snack and then they feel better, and it becomes a habit. With this habit, more weight piles on, and then that's how in certain cases, obesity and overweight can come. And it all starts with the cue, the routine, and reward, and what people do in the cue, routine, and reward. In order to change this habit and to change the weight gain, the goal is to switch up the routine. The cue may stay the same, but if you switch up the routine and get the same reward, okay, here's an example of how to switch up the routine. So we'll use the same example. The cue, the person had a bad day at work. And this triggers the brain to do an action. Where I would come in, instead of eating because of this cue, we'll switch it to exercising. Exercising for, let's say, 20 minutes. After exercising, the body is going to release endorphins and it's going to make us feel better. So the reward is going to stay the same as before, it's just that we're switching the routine. With this switch, the more we do it and the more we make it a habit, it will become automatic. And once it becomes automatic, then we'll end up losing weight because we're not eating snacks because of a bad day at work. The cue, routine, and reward can be manipulated to any way that fits the individual person. But the main thing that you always want to focus on is the routine. So if your cue is something that always happens and it makes you do an action, focus on what your reward is and figuring out a way to switch your routine so that your reward stays the same, but your routine changes to put you in a better position. There's multiple ways to rearrange this 3-step process. We can change the reward, so instead of it being cue, routine, and reward, we can change it to cue, routine, and consequence. Just to give a different perspective on how to look at habit forming. We'll stay with the same example of having a bad day at work. So the cue, a bad day at work. That's the trigger for the brain to do an action. The routine, if the routine was to eat snacks, we could switch the reward to a consequence. And from this perspective, eating snacks leads to weight gain. So with that perspective, we can see that you had a bad day at work, then you ate snacks, but the consequence was that you had weight gain. In the previous example, it was a cue, routine, then there was a reward. But the reward was you felt good. When you switch that up to a consequence, you put everything into a better perspective. And you're able to weigh your options better. So when you get the whole picture with the reward and the consequence, pros and cons, that type of thing, then you're able to say, okay, let me go for the reward. Felt good. But the consequences was bad. How about we switch this Exercise. Exercise, the reward stays the same, but then you eliminate that consequence. That's the better option. This is why I like to tell people, and I stand firm on my belief that Family Dreams Fitness is more than just fitness. It's more than lifting weights, and it's more than changing your body. It's more of the mindset and figuring out why you do things and how to switch up your habits so that you have a better lifestyle, and a lifestyle that it's not only better, but you have complete control over it because you know exactly why you're doing things, and you could figure out, okay, this isn't working, let me switch it up. So our lifestyle is just another word for combination of habits. So I'd like to intervene on more than a physical level, but a mental level. One thing that I like to focus on, and one thing that I like to really push, is for people to spend more time on themselves, to really figure out themselves and learn the psychology of their nature and how they do things and why they do things, and to know that they have complete control over changing their lives. A lot of people like to believe that their lives happen and most of it happens out of their control, but I believe, and I have an experience showing that you have complete control over your actions. You just have to take the time to really get the process done. The process isn't easy, but the concept is very understandable. So once I break the concept down so that you can understand it, then it becomes easier for you to say, hey, I know it's going to be a tough road, but I know that this road is going to pay off because of the end goal.